Now, Common Core is the Obama administration's answer to education. And because it's from the Obama administration, it's seen a bit of a partisan backlash. Surprised? Shouldn't be. Republican politicians oppose it, Democrats support it, but what about everyone else? Well, that's a good question. Well, 2 polls recently came out to try to answer that question. Now, one firm, PDK, teamed up with Gallup and found that just 33% of Americans support the Common Core standards. Interesting. The second poll, however, done by Education Next, and that's, by the way, a journal sponsored by Harvard's Kennedy School, the Hoover Institution in Stanford, and the Thomas B. Fordham Institute, also took another poll. Now, in that poll, 53% of respondents supported Common Core. Now, what in the world is going on here? That seems like a sort of a huge gap, right? Any guesses on what that might be?
Could it be the phrasing of the question?
Could it be the usage of the phrase Common Core?
According to NPR, roughly half of all respondents said they learned about Common Core from television, newspapers, and radio. Oh, and critics, like Glenn Beck, for example. Now, Glenn Beck, and as well as all these TV, newspaper, and radio, essentially have been used to wage a public campaign, a media campaign, against Common Core standards. I mentioned Glenn Beck. Here's an example of what he's saying about Common Core and what people are actually watching.
This is just the beginning, and all of it is wildly devastating for the health of education in our country, and it has to be stopped. This is top-down education from the federal government dictating to local schools what they must teach and how they must teach it. Local control is out the window with Common Core. Our kids are going to be indoctrinated with extreme leftist ideology. The time on Common Core to stand has almost passed.
So that's just an example of what people are told in right-wing media about Common Core. And it's 100% top-down education. Our government is taking over. Oh my God, Obama is teaching your kids to be communists, lesbian, gay, communist, socialist, Muslims, all that. Except the fact that he's full of shit. Now, Common Core, a couple of facts about that. Common Core isn't an actual government takeover education. It's state-led. It's designed to be state-led, as in state government makes decisions on whether or not to adopt Common Core or certain elements of Common Core. So far, 46 states have fully adopted Common Core standards, and they can withdraw at any time. The whole point of this is that it's optional. And this point gets to the disparity in the polls, is that people have so many different misconceptions, and a lot of it is wrapped up in politics, and that's why you get this massive difference in opinion. Now keep in mind that first poll, for example. Now this is where the poll where 33% of people approved. Now the question that was asked in this poll is, quote, do you favor or oppose having the teachers in your community use the Common Core state standards to guide what they teach? Now, a lot of people, obviously, about 60% said no, because they fear, or they have that fear, stoked by people like Beck and the right-wing media, that the government will be dictating what is taught, that the federal government, not the states. Now, Education Next, however, in their questioning asked this. They said, quote, as you may know, in the last few years, states have been deciding whether or not to use the Common Core, which are standards for reading and math that are the same across the states. In the states that have these standards, they will be used to hold public schools accountable for their performance. Do you support or oppose the use of Common Core standards in your state? Now, does anybody notice the difference between these two questions? There's so much more nuance in the Education Next question, and I think that's why you get a different answer. Now, NPR also points out that, quote, the team of EdNext also put the same do you support question to a different group of people, but they left out the words Common Core. You know what happened? Support jumped from 53% to 68%. As NPR reports, it's clear Drop those two toxic words, Common Core, and gain 15 points. They also said that this negative association with the name is a relatively new phenomenon, and that's according to Paul Peterson, professor at Harvard and the editor-in-chief of Education Next. He says his team posed the same two questions in the same poll 2 years ago, and the words Common Core made little difference. A strong majority then approved the Common Core standards with or without the name. So, and something that you might have noticed for the past couple of years is the conservative ramp up in rhetoric against Common Core standards. So I think this is a good case of context mattering, and not, you know, when you give people the full picture about something, then they're better able to make good decisions about this. Any thoughts?
Man, so this is kind of round two of this. You may remember we had the exact same phenomenon with Obamacare in the past. With the Affordable Care Act polls slightly better than Obamacare, and if you drop the name of it at all and just ask people if they like, and you pick things the bill does, it polls incredibly well. It's just, again, man, it's been a theme of the show tonight. Who cares what effect we actually have on people's life? Everything now has just become a giant advertising campaign, whether or not it's human life in the case of the, you know, Bo Bergdahl or the journalists who have been captured, or in this case whether or not it's education of our kids, or whether or not it's, you know, the health of the nation. Yeah, it's not about that anymore. Like the political discussion in America right now, and Ferguson's an excellent example too. It's not about like looking at an issue and trying to find a resolution from two different perspectives. You know, it's about winning the media battle or the marketing battle of my side versus your side. And Ferguson is a particularly good example of this because, you know, one of the things that the small government crowd is supposed to, you know, just be terrified of is an authoritarian police force. And now, because the right-wing talking heads have told them our side is to be against the guy that got shot and pro-police force, they completely go against their values and they're all pro-police. You know, we've picked sides on a thing that's just not inherently political. And the Common Core is another great example of that, and Mike Huckabee is a perfect microcosm of this because he was one of the very early advocates for basically the Common Core method a few years ago. But then as soon as the Common Core happened and got associated with Obama vaguely, all of a sudden he's, at least while he hasn't come out and said he's against what the Common Core does, he has come out against the Common Core proper. And it's just, you can tell it's just him trying to figure out some way to not get called out for being a blatant political shill, and you know, and not completely contradict himself. And he's not doing a fantastic job of it. But it's pitiful, man. Just it's so us versus them. Everything's media ratings driven. You know, everything's got to be a fight. The days of trying to figure out a problem and make things better, it just seems like they're over, and it's really discouraging.
I mean, there are two main issues here. One is the messaging, and one is with kind of Common Core itself. And with Common Core, you know, technically it is a top-down dictation from the government saying you need to teach these sort of things in your classes. And for the most part, that's kind of, in essence, it is a good idea. You want your kids to be taught how to add up, how to multiply, how to use proper grammar. Christ knows the kind of comments in YouTube need it, not just in our comments, but in all comments in YouTube. So kind of part of it is good, part of it is bad. Does it need reforming? Yes, no doubt. Some bits need to be added, some bits need to be taken away. But the main issue with this story, in terms of the phrasing, and we saw it with the Affordable Care Act, you know, when people didn't really know what it was, Obamacare, or people don't like that, the ACA, oh, brilliant, yeah, it's great, it gives me health insurance. Really, politics these days, Jordan's right, it has become marketing. Who can sell themselves the best? It doesn't matter what product you're selling, they're all selling some form of shit, whether it's kind of cow shit or horse shit, it doesn't matter. They're just trying to sell you their product, and it's just who's got the better marketing team. And at the moment, it's sad to say, but the GOP does have the better marketers. They're better at selling their brand of shit.